Welcome, everybody, to League Night. We are excited to bring you the best conversation surrounding relevant disc golf topics. Tonight, we are joined by Dion Arlen, bringing us the stats from Stat Mando. How's it going, Dion?
It's flannel season. I couldn't be happier.
Flannel season. We're also going to go over to Josh Graham joining us from the seat. We know he brings the hot topics, or the hot takes, I should say.
That's right. It's Disc Golf Network season right here, baby.
Disc Golf Network season is it's all season. Now, here's where we're going with this. We have completed the regular season for the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Now, the regular season consists of all Elite and Silver Series, as well as a culmination of the majors. You take all the points that were earned and achieved by these players out there during the season, put them all together, and you find out who makes it into the playoffs. Now, I just oversimplified that, but the first round of the playoffs is happening at the Green Mountain Championship starting on Thursday. It's a 4-round event. I believe the number is set to, what's the total number here? 100 and I want to say 8, I think, is what makes it into GMC. And they're going to play as hard as they can because we're going to talk about it. There's some names and some players who will not go on to round 2, which is taking place at the MVP Open at Maple Hill as the final round of the playoff before the championship finale. Now, there is a cut. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about who are these names that we should be looking at, as well as what we think about the playoffs and maybe what it could be going forward. So without further ado, let's talk about what's at stake. And I'm not talking about the meal. I love steak, but we're going to talk about what these players have to win or to lose here. And we're going to start out talking this conversation with buys. So the Disc Golf Pro Tour has set up the opportunity for players to receive buys. Let's start with the MPO, Dion, and break down what we know about these buys. I think there's a minimum cash limit that a lot of these players will get if they earn the buy. Tell us about it.
Absolutely. So there's a lot at stake here. These buys are considerably valuable to the players. So not only are they competing for prize money at GMC and want to put forth their best effort, but if they perform well, they might clinch one of these buy positions, which is going to guarantee them a fantastic payday in the tour finals. Last year, we saw on the MPO side, any player that made a buy, which would be in the semifinals or above, got $5,000 guaranteed, $4,000 guaranteed on the FPO side, making it into that final round. On the MPO side, we have a few players who have clinched these buy positions. And that would be, as you can see on the small graphic there, and you have to forgive my terrible eyesight, but Paul Macbeth, Ricky Wysocki, and Calvin Heimberg, they're a lock. They've clinched those buy positions. So we have quite a few more open spots for the next set of players to be gunning for. One of the player combinations to be looking out for most closely during the GMC is going to be between Joel Freeman and Kevin Jones, who are going to be 50 points ahead of Clemens, Oram, and Klein. So I think you're going to watch, in particular, for Matt Oram, Kyle Klein, and Chris Clemens to make a push because they might be able to chase down that last buy spot, guarantee themselves a great payday in the finals.
Okay, so earning a buy is important. You gave us a few names. Josh, if you're playing the Pro Tour, do you want to buy?
Yeah, well, it depends. Well, the answer is absolutely yes. When it comes to like these playoff events, earning these final points leading up to this, trying to earn a buy, right? First of all, I'm going to take a step back, Matt, and say, when I'm watching GMC or MVP Open, I'm still watching to see who's going to win those events, right? The good old classic, like who's at the top of the podium. But this secondary storyline, at least leading up to the championship, is intriguing. And so for buys, I'm going to pick the obvious example, but I think it's compelling. Let me play it out for you. So you see in round 1, Mason Ford, currently 17th, I believe, in points. So to earn a buy into the quarterfinals, but listen to this. He is sitting behind Drew Gibson by 27.5 points. In the last event alone, he gained 27 points on Gibson and 34 points the event before. So like, he's proven to himself, even in the last few events, that he can gain that much on Drew Gibson. Obviously, the playoff event in itself is weighted at 125%, so more potential. But this is where, watch who's going to win the event, but then scroll down the leaderboard a bit and pick a player or two like that and see. every stroke might matter for Mason Ford to make it into a bye, get a little closer to championship. And somebody like Mason, right, different than somebody like Paul Macbeth, who really only cares about winning the big events. Mason Ford cares about winning the big events, but he has a lot more to earn, a lot more at stake, whether it be both cash, notoriety, right, and just performing well. So there's plenty of other names, but that's a name I'd pick in MPO.
All right. Producer Ben, you mind throwing up the FPO bracket for us? And Dion, go ahead and enhance our information surrounding the buy opportunities for the FPO division.
Absolutely. So the race that you're going to want to watch during the playoffs is between Valerie Mondahano, Owen Scoggins, and Missy Gannon. They're fighting for that last buy opportunity. They're all within a few points of each other and have so much to gain. On the FPO side, historically, over the last 2 years, an individual who has been in that buy position has taken home over $8,000 more than those without. So not only is the buy going to guarantee you money, but historically, the performances from those players have gotten them bigger payouts.
So, I mean, on the FPO side, it seems like things aren't quite as locked. And that's for various reasons, but you get a lot of points. We didn't talk about this quite yet. It's 125 points. Is that correct for the winner of this event, Green Mountain Championship? Does that sound right?
All the playoff events have a 1.25 multiplier, so they're worth more.
Right. So the top names here in these divisions could still change a fair amount. So that's something definitely to be on the lookout for. All right, let's move our topic here a little bit more from earning a buy to the championship themselves. Who's getting into the championship? Let's start it out. The FPO here, Dion. Let's talk about it. Names to watch for.
Yeah, so we have the bracket here, and you're not going to see a lot of movement. While the FPO division has had a tremendous amount of variety in winners, it's still not as deep as it might be in the coming years. So all the way down to Haley King, who's in that last playoff position, with those names listed below within the play-in category, we're not going to see a lot of movement there. It's going to take a lot of effort from the Holland Hanleys of the world to move into a seated position versus being relegated to the play-in. So I don't think you're going to see a lot of movement out of the FPO division, but we are going to see a lot of talent be represented, as this is an amazing field coming into the playoffs.
So is it too much to say that it sounds like it's a lock for the FPO division, or does that sound about right?
Well, part of the challenge in calculating these things is there is a tremendous amount of possible movement given certain scenarios, right? So you're not just doing the math to see who can catch up, you're also looking who are they passing and what do they have to gain by passing them. So without some massive supercomputer, which sneak peek, we actually are working on that at Statmando. It wasn't ready for this year's off season, but look for that in future seasons with your sort of scenario calculator, and you might be able to click on a name like Jennifer Allen, who's right on the bubble, and see exactly what needs to transpire for her to get in. But as it stands today, I don't think you're going to see a tremendous amount of movement.
Josh,
so that's the math, which I wholeheartedly believe in. But here's some things, for example, I just find it intriguing to look at in FPO, and then I'm going to take a step back and comment on MPO as well. But just this last weekend is an interesting example. At a Silver Series, Jessica Weiss was not in the play-in opportunity prior to this last week, but with a second place finish at a Silver Series, discounted points, she still jumped a few players, right? And now an opportunity for play-in. Just below the line, we see Jennifer Allen, Rebecca Cox. And look, Rebecca just earned 15 points this past weekend, and that puts her only 41 points away from an opportunity to play in. And again, these players on the fringe, we realize they're not always the top storyline of the season. But again, it's fun to scroll down the leaderboard a bit and see, hey, Jessica Weiss, is she confident after a strong second place at a Silver Series to come in, perform well at GMC, keep herself in the play-in opportunity, or can somebody like Rebecca Cox surprise everybody, make the play-in, and then make a run for it? Don't forget, in the championship event, more than once, we've had a player who was ranked way down the leaderboard make a run for the championship, namely an MPO, Nathan Queen. And then before we move on in MPO, and you don't have to go back to the graphic.
Well, no, we're not moving on. Let's get into it. Go ahead, Ben. Throw that graphic up for us.
The MPO?
Yes, there you go.
Perfect. Thank you. So then I was going to, just similar, because I'm just picking names to consider. Look at somebody like Ben Calloway, who's 45th in tour points. He's 9 spots out of a play-in, okay? Sitting just under 51 points behind Andrew Marweed. But at Pro Worlds, which is a weighted event, he gained 75 points. He had a strong performance, stronger than he's had most of the year, right? But you can bet, right? Just as an example, somebody like Ben is hoping to capitalize on that momentum, and he's watching both what players above him might drop from an event, right, to let him move up the leaderboard or not attempt to play the championship. But he's also working to earn enough points at these last two events to find a way in. And sure, he's on the fringe. You know, that supercomputer calculator probably doesn't project he could get in, but we've seen these stories before, and, you know, somebody like Ben could do it. So when he's out there, whether or not we're watching, whether or not he's on live coverage, I can assure you he knows his point situation and he knows what's at stake.
Okay. Yeah. And Dion, give any closing thoughts there on the MPO here.
No, I think that's spot on, and what I'm looking forward to as the playoff system matures. I think it's a phenomenal idea from the Pro Tour to implement a system like this. As we see it mature, we're going to see more and more players optimize their season, earning those points, and it's going to be a bigger and bigger storyline as the sport progresses. Super excited about it.
Okay. Before we move into the next topic, I want to put out there that this is something new to me as I researched for this show. The Pro Tour is having qualifiers. I say qualifiers. Here's how it works. The top 30 MPO get into the championship itself, okay? And the top 14 FPO. Now, you have two places on either side of that. So if you're the top 30, you're in, but 31 and 32 get an automatic opportunity to play a qualifying event leading into that. The same thing in the FPO. The top 15 and 16 get an automatic opportunity for a play-in event for the championships to qualify. Now, you add to that 4 other opportunities. I call them exemptions. I think that's what the Pro Tour calls them. For instance, Eagle McMahon, a name who right now has not qualified based off of points. Is that correct, Dion?
He
right.
has a guaranteed play-in spot due to his European Open win, but he's very low in the points.
Yeah, absolutely. So a player like him, for instance, could come to this play-in opportunity and make their way into the championship. So I didn't want to bypass that. We may see, I don't know what the right word here would be, but a player come in from outside of the points that actually is able to take the whole thing down. Again, namely maybe Eagle McMahon. I don't know if he's going to take that opportunity, but that's your opportunities to get into the championship. All right. We're heading out of GMC. It's going to be wrapped up by Sunday. We're going to know who the winners are. It's a 4-round event. We're going to know the players who have earned enough points to get into the MVP, the final round, the MVP Open at Maple Hill. Dion, what are some names we're looking for as we get ready to enter into the MVP Open that we think are going to maybe just watch for, is what I'll say, because it's hard to nail down who we think's getting in.
Yeah, at this point, MVP attendance is only clinched by players ranked up to number 50, which is currently Cole Redolin. So if you're looking at the Pro Tour standings today, any name below that 50th threshold is at risk at not playing in the MVP Open. There's about another 15 or so spots, 20 or so spots that population of players are going to be vying for so they can continue their playoff journey. A few that stand out to me would be Alex Russell, Eric Oakley, Jake Hebenheimer, Luke Sampson, Cale LaVisca, who may or may not be attending the playoffs, right? We still have the logistics issue on whether or not a player can promise the trip out to the East Coast if they're not going to have a realistic opportunity to qualify. So players have to make a decision and start, invest money or not, judgment call, whether they think they have the skills to get in. So there's quite a few names that are well known. James Proctor, who had a great showing at the Silver Series at Butler. People who can really do some damage at an MVP style event need to perform well this week.
Absolutely. Josh, this is the storyline I think you were talking about. Dion just played for us that below 50, I think it was 55. There's no guarantee for those players. They have something to play for this weekend. Do you think the players, this is a stupid question, actually. The players want to get into the MVP Open. 1, because it's a great event. 2, because they want to make it into the playoffs, the finale. Are these players playing with more pressure this weekend?
Yeah, well, I mean, the same reason that every player goes out and tries to play any event, because they think they have a chance to win. And if not to actually win, to perform well enough to get recognized, to earn sponsorships, future opportunities, and make a career out of disc golf, right? There's very few who are doing it purely for recreational purposes today at the top level, right? So, I mean, are they feeling more pressure? There probably are some of them. I think those around the line are feeling pressure. Now, here's the deal. If you're 90th and you're playing in GMC this weekend, right, your likelihood of actually making it right forward from there may be fairly low. But still, this single event can be a make or break for you. And don't forget, a lot of them just plain old love disc golf, so they want to play. But it is interesting, you look at a player like Paul Ulibarri, currently 73rd in points, has an interesting season, some time off with injuries, obviously focus on a few different things. But, do you think he's aware he's in 73rd and he's, going to play GMC and see how he performs? So there's still exciting storylines out there. When you're in that range of 50 to 72 or up to 90 or whatever it is, there are recognizable names. And so there are things to watch out there. And that's just in MPO. Obviously in FPO, the ranking numbers are different, but similar types of storylines.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll throw you one more name, guys,
Do it.
and that is last year's champion, Nathan Queen, sitting in 94th right now. And if there isn't any exception for returning champions, he's at risk at not making the playoffs a year after taking it all down.
Yeah.
Interesting. And there's a whole list of players that we would know their names and we would say we're surprised to find out they might not make the final round of the playoff. Now, this is my segue because the playoffs right now in its first edition is the first edition as the Pro Tour does anything. I mean, even the tour cards are in their first edition. I think we're going to see a lot of modifications, enhancements, additions, tweaks. The Pro Tour is great as listening to the players and making these changes. But during this first iteration, there are definitely things that we want to see change going forward. We're here to talk about it a little bit. Paul Macbeth, in an interview post-win at the World Championships, not the one immediately following, during the week after, made it known that he has nothing to play for in the playoffs. The playoffs mean nothing to him, and it affects him in no way. Now, is he in a different tier of his own? Obviously, he is. But there are other players like that right now who are already clinched, and the playoffs mean nothing for them. They're playing the Green Mountain Championship. I personally would like to see a reason for them to play, whether it's if you don't win, you don't lose points, but maybe you earn bonuses for the finale, things of that nature, whether it's money or strokes. And I also want to say at the Green Mountain Championship, at the time of this recording, my understanding is that all the players, maybe about 10 or 15 that wanted to play in as a qualifier to the Green Mountain Championships, they all just got let in without even having to play the qualifying round because there was enough spots for them. I would like to see the playoffs become pretty hard and fast going forward to where there's actually something on the line where if you don't get it, you're not in, and that's your last opportunity. I know where we're at in the sport right now, but I'd love to see it get a little bit harder, a little bit faster, and put more on the line for those even at the top. Josh, do you have any opinions on this?
Yeah, so the concept of playoffs, just what the word carries in its own, right? Or because people know what playoffs are, right? Which usually are elimination, right? Type events. It's usually where you highlight the elite teams or players, right? You have to earn your way into it. And so the concept, I love it. I will say it's still a little bit confusing because it's so new in our sport, and I don't mean that in a negative way, right? But it's like trying to figure out where does this fit and how is it going to play out? And I think that's the opportunity for the Pro Tour here. I have no question they'll figure out event logistics and how to do it. But yeah, more storyline narratives throughout the year leading up to the playoffs. To your point, they might have to be a little bit more restrictive, more specific. What is at stake? And they're going to have to do that in combination feedback from the players, understanding how the numbers actually play out. Matt, to your example, restricting an event to 100, but then really having not that cap not meaning a whole lot necessarily. And then just more clarity for us as media and fans. I think those are things that'll evolve over time. And to some extent, no matter how well they communicate it, we probably all would still be wondering what's happening because it's new. But I love the idea. More storylines, maybe more restrictive. Lots of opportunity potential here.
Dion, give us any of your thoughts. What would you like to see?
Sure. So I will just be a cheerleader at first and say I like that the tour is trying new things and being bold in its decision-making process. I favor that mentality over the conservative mentality when it comes to evolving our sport. That said, there are some things we can critique here that the Pro Tour will undoubtedly learn and take away from. Repurposing a standard event like GMC and MVP and narrowing the field to playoff only while you have players like Paul Macbeth, Ricky Risaki, Calvin Heimberg are guaranteed to make it to the finals does reduce the value of their participation. And it creates a bit of a subplot mystery where if Ricky or Paul win, they might be taking the types of point values away from a player that really needed it to make a push to get into the finals. So it becomes more about preventing somebody the opportunity than it does earning that opportunity by playing in if you're a guy like Paul Macbeth. So that's an interesting subplot. And look, if you're Ricky, maybe you like to do that. Maybe you want to shut down somebody else's chances. The other thing that I'd critique is having a stricter RSVP model so that it's really clear and known ahead of time. Are you committing if you qualify or are you not? And then you will only have a few instances where you may choose to let somebody in off of a wait list because some life event happened and prevented a player from showing up. But if there's that much lack of clarity leading up into the 2-3 week period in these events, and it becomes a, oh, well, you're here, you showed up, we'll let you play type of situation, that does lessen the value of the playoffs. So as it gets tighter, I want to see that get tightened up.
Yeah, I'll react just very briefly to that because that's interesting, Dion, meaning the rub between these players who don't have a lot to earn, yet they do have something to earn, just not from points, right? So in other words, like Paul and Ricky would still like to win because, by the way, they both are still trying to form the final narrative on the season. And not only them, quite frankly, right? The other top players. If any one of them were to win both GMC and the MVP, it means nothing for the championship points, but it might mean everything for the storyline of the season.
But
right?
that's how it is currently, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm saying that that's an opportunity to figure out how to improve that, because you want your best players vying to win, right? Because you want to shape the narrative of the season. But then it is weird when we're trying to figure out the points aspect means nothing to them at these events. It's literally just the trophy.
I think what needs to happen, and I speak like hard like that as if I know, but I think what would be cool to see is another event established leading into maybe an addition to the players who have not clinched a playoff option that they get to play in. So maybe it's not your top 20 players playing there, but everybody who's playing is playing for a purpose, whether it's to clinch a spot into the playoffs or it's to earn their spot, to their opportunity to go further. I think it would be neat to see that, keep these events as the standalone events they are. Again, there's going to be a way to figure this out, but I'd love to see the storyline enhanced on those who have something to lose. And to your point, Dion, and I thought it was great, to your point about, the top players being able to maybe play another player out by winning and taking their spot, if you will, or the points that are available. Like this happens in major sports all the time. Think of the NFL playoffs. A team who is not able to get in, playing against somebody who's already in, but could earn a first round or second round bye, and then beating them without earning any spot into the playoffs. So I think that's okay. But all the things that you guys said, I'm on board with. I look forward very much to how the Pro Tour handles the growth of the playoffs. Again, exciting opportunity, another way to receive more fans, more interest, more excitement, all of that combined. All right. Any closing thoughts? Any rebuttals? Any thoughts on corrections or anything you want to say before we move on?
A little something for everybody in the playoffs.
Perfect. We're looking forward to it as it comes to GMC and then to MVP Open. All right. Let's go ahead and move into our fan favorite segment. We all know it by this point as 2 minutes. 2 minutes. The place where we put a clock on our conversation. We got Dion going up with Josh here. We're going to start it out with Macbeth says that Ken Climo is annoying him. Now, post-round after the World Championships 2022, he was asked about the legacy of Ken Climo and how, Paul, you yourself are maybe starting to get close to that. Is that on your mind at all? Does that play into your conversation? And he said, I just wish that Ken Climo was more present. In other interviews throughout the week, he elaborated a little bit more to say that he's annoyed by the fact that Ken Climo is trying to claim the #1 spot while not being present in the sport. Now, this conversation is not about who is the GOAT as much as it is about the conversation surrounding Ken Climo not being present, Paul Macbeth asking for it, the fact that Paul Macbeth is putting it out there. This is an open conversation. I'm going to start with you, Dion. What do you think about what Macbeth said?
Well, first, let me just say how absolutely nervously racked I am appearing on my very first 2-minute session. I
Oh,
hope I
yeah.
don't ramble for too long
You
and
already
eat
gave
up
up
much of
10
the clock.
seconds.
Time to
Oh
know.
my God. Oh, shoot. Here we go. Yeah, so I think this is a really interesting storyline. I almost question, you know, are we playing this up as media because we love the ability to take these two big names and put them against each other and create this rivalry? Or is it really just us drawing this out of Paul? He made the comments during Worlds that he wished Climo was more present. We took that at face value. As the conversation progressed, we pulled and pulled and pulled more out of him. Look, I think Paul thinks he's the best player of all time, and he wants to be able to prove that, which means he wants Climo on the course in his prime so he can beat him, but that's never going to happen. Climo is much older, from a different era, and is dealing with injuries, so I don't think we'll ever get a settlement to this, but I think that's where Paul's coming from.
Okay, Josh,
Yeah,
you agree?
and there were like a lot of emotions at the moment. In fact, you see Terry Miller asked him the question. Macbeth almost choked up, said, "Oh man," paused, then said, "Look, it's awesome," meaning the comparison, but I just wish he was more present, right? And we already heard that, right? I want Kenny to be present. And then the emotions again hit Paul. In fact, he almost like kind of cried. I'm sure it's the overall moment, but the point is, look, if we just take that moment in those words in context, Paul views Ken Climo as one of the greats of all time. I think it's somewhat frustrating for Paul, quite honestly, even for me as a fan, to have all these debates about someone who seems to be from a bygone era, and he's not helping us bridge that gap to this era. To be clear, it doesn't have to be his responsibility, right? He doesn't have to. But that's what Paul is saying. If you want to be in the conversation, then guess what? Join the conversation. The conversation is happening now in this current era. And I think that's the primary reaction.
By the way, these topics for this 2-minute segment are on the carryover from World. So we're digging back into things we might have missed, a mixed bag of topics here. And just Dion, my reaction, I don't have a timer tonight, but my reaction.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
10 seconds.
My reaction to what you said there, and I have to speak up. You said we drew it out of him. I was the interviewer for the conversation. I said, Paul Macbeth, how are we to interpret what you said? Is it at face value? And he said, the fans can interpret it however they want, but I am annoyed. And so he kind of went on to say, I am annoyed. So I found that interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know
so
how
am
much.
I. So that was my point. It annoys me as well. So Paul and I have something in common.
Awesome. Sorry, I don't usually do that. Topic number 2, Disc Golf Pro Tour Championships announced a new finale location. It's not at Hornets Nest. Some of you may be hearing this for the first time. Some of the players, it's possible. I don't know how likely it is, but the communication may have been limited with them as well, that the new announced location of Nevins Community Park, down only about 2.5 miles away from Hornets Nest, the previous location for the Disc Golf Pro Tour finale, it has been announced due to the fact that Parks and Recreation at Hornets Nest is not able to facilitate the event this year. It was just recently announced. We're about a month out, if that's accurate, to the finale. What do you guys think about this? The new location, by the way, reminiscent of very wooded, a little bit Hornets Nest-esque, maybe not as much open holes. Go ahead, Josh. What's your reaction to this news?
All right. Well, logistics and planning are hard, right, Matt? I mean, you and I have even run a national tier event, so like I actually extend a lot of grace. But here's what I want. I think things are slowly moving this way also. You either establish a pattern on a private course where disc golf is the priority and where you have much more control over things, such as infrastructure projects, right? Or if you're going to use public land, I don't think it can just be like a strong relationship between a disc golf club and the Parks and Rec. Right, that has taken us a long way. Great, but it's time to move beyond that. Serious contracts need to be in place so that you can make major investments. Because, by the way, people don't want to invest in things with uncertainty, and that creates a problem. Now, we don't get to see behind the scenes here. I know, right? Maybe some of these things have happened, but this is how significant events and planning are handled. From a fan and media standpoint, I just want an established location, or at least an established rotation if need be, where we can see history build, where we can become familiar with the course in the big moments on that course and where they happened, remembering hole 16 where such and such shot happened, and where the players and live spectators can actually get excited about those memories.
Okay, Dion, reactions.
Yeah, I agree. I think you want to start locking in some of these locations at our biggest events I think this is a great reminder. It's almost like a gut check for the disc golf sports world to remember how far and how fast we've come in certain areas of the game. Pro Tour has spoiled us in terms of media. Post-production companies like Jomez deliver a top-notch product that can go toe-to-toe with other things we see in more developed sports, while at the same time, we have logistical issues and property management and venue problems that no other sport is going to be dealing with when they're a mature organization. So I think it's a great gut check for disc golf as a whole to remember we still have a long way to go and to be thankful for the things that we have progressed so quickly on.
Okay.
Dude, 10 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah,
so
we're leaving time for Matt because he's going to.
No, I was about to say this has never happened, Dion. So there we go. 2 minutes topic on the Pro Tour finale location, moving into Kristen Tatar, just generally as a topic. But I will say, after her win at Worlds, showing up here at the Butler County Classic, taking it down, a strong follow-up to those performances, obviously staying sharp, coming into the Green Mountain Championships. What do you think about Kristen right now, Dion?
I thought it was an interesting choice to play the event, and I think I'm going to speculate on a few factors that may have contributed to that decision. She's in the States while she waits to play out the remainder of the season and hit these last few events. So she could have opted to take a week off, rest, let the body heal up. She's been dealing with some nagging injuries, and that is certainly a viable option. Or, to something you said earlier today, Josh, these are disc golfers who love playing disc golf, and there was an event, and she was here to play it. So it might have just been a simple reaction to, oh, I get to play more disc golf and show off my skill set. I would recommend that as we mature as a sport, players be a little bit more cautious about overextending themselves, especially if injuries are a concern. The flip side to that coin is she dominated, built more confidence, and may have the most momentum coming into the playoffs as any player in the FPO field.
Yeah, so Worlds was a wide open course. She said it didn't favor her game. She won easily. Butler County was heavily wooded. I think she commented that is helping her kind of find the right balance between those course styles heading into GMC and MVP, give her some momentum. There could be those other factors. But since I'm here head to head kind of with Statmando, here's some stats for you. You ready, Dion? In the last 10 Pro Worlds across MPO and FPO, there have only been 4 out of 9 possible players who have followed up their Worlds win with another win. Those names are Macbeth Wysocki, Paige Pierce, and Katrina Allen. That is until this past weekend when Kristen puts her name in that group, becoming only the 5th to do so. And over the last 10 years, in the 3 events following Pro Worlds, listen to this, Macbeth averages 2nd place. In other words, he comes out hot. And all other winners average 7th place. In FPO, Paige Pierce averaged 2nd. Comes out hot. All others averaged 4th. In other words, everybody else seems to fall off except 2 of the greats of our game. And is it too early to tell? Maybe it is. It's only 1 event and it's a silver series, but Kristen wins World and comes out with another win. I don't know. I think that's kind of cool.
These world champions are able to take the confidence and run with it, it sounds like. And so are we making picks yet? That's not this segment, but maybe it's a little bit of Tatar and Macbeth. They're going to place pretty high, I would imagine. Going into our final conversation for 2 minutes here. Future Worlds bids. It was made known that that Dynamic Disc in Emporia, Kansas was the only bid for the 2022 World Championships, the ones that we just had. Paul Macbeth himself says we have no right to complain about courses or any desire for something different. When that's the case, one place put in a bid, that's what we have. The bid is the way it's done for majors. What do you guys think about that? Future bids, where should it be? How should it be done? What are we looking at? Josh, you start us out.
All right, so I'm not like really technically informed on the whole bid process. I know about it, so this is a fairly generic opinion, but it's interesting position for our sport. We've already commented on this, where bids for Pro Worlds are limited. They seem to be weighted towards prior history because there's established patterns there. They're easy to revisit. Teams have figured out how to capitalize on it. But for others, right, like new teams, the level of heavy lifting isn't worth it. At least I think that's part of the calculation. But with the Pro Tour taking over National Tour and PDGA focusing on majors, I wonder if there's a way to revisit this whole thing and not simply wait for bids to come to you, but instead, how about you go to them, whatever them is? Think strategically, big picture, premier world destinations, proximity to major population centers and locations, and make it happen. Promote the sport of disc golf. Guess where the economics are big? Near population centers and cities. You don't think there's enough sponsorships and investors and a way to turn this into revenue, to grow the game? PDGA can be the actual primary organizer. They can still use volunteers in other places. Look, plenty of places do this. Other sports do it. Conventions, corporate events, they come in, they run things top tier and make it the best our game, gets to see.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't even really have a counterpoint to that. I think you and I are on the same page on this one, Josh, in which we're at a point in our sport that we could be hiring third-party event management platforms. PDGA could be doing some of that work. The Pro Tour can be contributing to some of that work. And we should be looking for venues that support the type of product we want to present to the world that satisfy all of those categorical columns that you called off. Population centers, venues, parking. Parking is like the number one constraint for any event anywhere in the country. So if we can start finding some of these locations, allow us to mature where Worlds is being held, maybe create that rotating World schedule, that would be an optimal way, I think, to showcase the best in the world.
I mean, would it not be awesome? Like, I'm just picking, but like, PDJ Pro World Chicago, San Diego, like whatever it is, like, and it is brought and it is thrown down and it's the biggest thing, conventions, the whole shebang for Pro Worlds. Instead, we're getting local clubs, and I'm exaggerating the work here, but like trying to run events, we're outgrowing it.
All right, let's close out the 2-minute segment. I'm going to let Dion get his words in, but let's go out of the segment here. And as we get ready to move into our next conversation on Rookie of the Year, the update will be presented by Statmando. We're going to call it Stat Zone, presented by Statmando. Let's move right into it. Rookie of the Year, starting with FPO. But before we do that, Dion, what were your closing thoughts?
Well, we won't unpack this entire can of worms, but we are still heavily reliant on volunteer labor, and I think that's the deterrent that's contributing to the lack of Worlds bids, to your point earlier, Josh. So bring it in, pump it up. I think we're going to have a better Worlds product overall.
Oh, I have so much to respond to that, but we'll have to save it.
We've got a much larger membership now too. Much larger membership, much larger. Hopefully the money is starting to be used. We've voted in new committee members and board of director members, and we'll see where it goes. But let's move into Rookie of the Year. This is going to be a short update for us. There's not a lot to unpack here, but it's kind of neat to look at. Stat Zone update by Statmando. Go ahead, Dion, fill us in. FPO.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm super excited to present this segment. This is an area of the website on Statmando called the Stat Zone. And just a reminder that we have our first official Glow Z Stat Zones available at infinitediscs.com. And within the Stat Zone, we have an entire list of various things that you can research. One of them was partnering with the Pro Tour and creating the Rookie of the Year quantification calculator. So within the Stat Zone, you can look at the FPO players who are eligible for Rookie of the Year on the Pro Tour and where they stand today, and it's going to be determined by points. And as you can see, Emily Beach crushing. It's going to take a lot of effort for players like Stacey Haas and Lucky Lorenza, butchering that name, I apologize. Haiti Lene, also butchering that name, I apologize. But there's very few players who are going to be able to catch up to Emily, so she is on lock at this point. But you can research this at any time on the Statmando website.
Yeah, that's a great update. Let's go ahead and take a look at the MPO update on Rookie of the Year.
All right, now this is an exciting battle. Isaac Robinson out in front, a clear leader, having won one of the Pro Tour events, but right behind him, Chandler Kramer, Linus Carlson, Evan Smith, Evan Scott, and a little further down, some true rookies out there, Robert Burridge. And Randon Latta, who I'm not sure is if a true rookie or not, but somebody who's certainly qualified as a rookie for the Pro Tour's calculations. So there's a lot of names on this list that can make a big splash. If any of these guys were to perform well or maybe even win GMC or MVP, they might put themselves in the pole position for Rookie of the Year.
Interesting. So MPO, it's a lot tighter. These playoffs can make a big difference, as you said, a splash. Josh, any reactions to Player of the Year? I mean, Rookie of the Year. Sorry, we're not player yet. I know people are getting anxious there. We'll bring that up soon. Rookie of the Year, Josh. Like,
yeah, I mean, to be clear, these are probably secondary storylines, but first of all, think about how compelling it is to those players themselves. As this sport grows, right, which it clearly is, as the upper tier becomes more elite, breaking into those ranks, right, and getting recognized for anything other than being kind of a middling player, right, somewhere ranked in the 50s and nobody knows your name. Winning an award like this is a big deal, especially when you entering the scene and you qualify for Rookie of the Year. So I think it's exciting to watch it. Obviously, it'll be a big congrats to those players. And I think as the years go, these types of awards will start meaning more because the sport will grow and it's kind of harder to break into those ranks. So I think it's pretty exciting to see.
Great input, everybody. If you are watching live or you're watching post, would you leave a comment? What is something we missed? Maybe your enhancement to the conversation we had, your input on World's Rookie of the Year or the playoffs. What do you think about all that? Let us know. We'd be glad to look in and chat with you on that. Moving into this Thursday, September 15th, we have the first round of the first ever playoffs at the Green Mountain Championships. You can tune in here on the Disc Golf Network. Your subscription is well worth it, and we want to make sure you know that. Green Mountain Championships on Thursday. It is a 4-round event. You'll be able to catch both the FPO and MPO action every round. There's a lot of feature card media out there for you to consume. All right, boys, moving out from that, I just want to close out the show by saying there was a celebrity wedding in the disc golf world this week. His name is Simon Lizotte. He is a married man. Congratulations to him and Natalia and their son, Emmett. We wish them nothing but the best. All right, guys, until next time, we'll be watching disc golf, and we'll see everyone back here next week here on League Night.